Welcome back, everyone. Just hiking into the cabin. Lots of snow here, about 3 feet or so. Royce is a real trooper. He's carrying all his own stuff in. Got to get him all trained up for a backpacking trip that's coming up. So I'm just gonna head in, have a nice relaxing time at the cabin, and I want to talk to you, speaking about tripping and backpacking and stuff like that. I want to talk about my last 2 winter camping trips and kind of the mental game that goes along with going on a trip like that in the depths of winter. Stay tuned. Well, look at that in the sunshine. It is about almost 11 degrees. Well, it is 11 degrees. Look at that. It's actually probably like -5 or something if you're not standing in the sun, but we are definitely through the deepest part of the winter. Like, we are over the hump. We're heading into the second week of March. So I'm actually here putting in some taps for maple season. You guys know I do my tapping my maple trees here. I don't do a lot, do about 5 taps every year, but that gives me more than enough, depending on the year, to get some maple syrup. So I'm pretty excited about that. So stay tuned. I'll be doing a little video on that very shortly for you, for those of you who have not seen me do that. Beautiful day. That's all I can say. Sun just high in the sky. A little windy though, I'll give you that. One nice thing is the snow, even though it's really deep, there is a bit of a firm crust on there. So, we're not really breaking through too badly, which is a godsend really when you're bringing in stuff. The good thing is there's no bugs. So yes, I got another camping trip planned. We're gonna go to Frontenac Park for a 4-day trip coming up in the next month. So hopefully I'll get that in before the black fly hatch, or else we're in big trouble. Yeah, let's get talking about a couple of big winter trips I did this year. If you haven't checked them out, I did one series, was my solo trip to Algonquin Park, 4 days, 3 nights. So that involved some planning for sure. It was me and the dog. And then we did a 3-person trip in a blizzard, well, really nasty, windy storm. About 40 centimeters of snow fell while we were there. So that was a 3-day, 2-night trip that we did in the depths of winter. So let's talk a bit about sort of some of the stresses and things like that that come with doing big trips like that in the depths of winter. Certainly quite windy today. So lots of different challenges on these winter trips. They were done very end of, well, 3rd, 4th week of January and the 2nd week of February. So booking these trips far out like I did, you don't really know what to expect in terms of weather. You can expect cold, you can probably expect some snow, but you just don't know how cold. So initially, when I was booking, just popped through the snow there, speaking of, some of the snow's melting actually. So it was saying that the nights were going to be first -20s or so, which, whatever, I can deal with that. And the daytime highs would be like -10 or whatnot. Not a big deal. Got a wood stove, I got a canvas wall tent, I've got lots of winter camping gear, and it's the planning for that, obviously. But as the time got a little closer, especially for the Mule Lake trip, it was saying that it would be -30 at night. Imagine my anxiety ratchets up. Because that's a whole nother level. I mean, you're going to be up most of the night stoking a little wood stove. We have a lovely little wood stove, but certainly, that requires more planning, more hauling in wood and things like that. So in the Frontenac trip, the concern there was, as time went on, it became very evident that we were going to get the storm of the winter was going to hit that weekend. So lots of discussions were had. I mean, obviously with myself going as a solo camper for that Algonquin Park trip, and then team we went into Frontenac, is this something that we can manage? And I had lots of doubts, almost canceled out on the Algonquin trip, thinking that, man, if it's going to be -30, I honestly, good conversation with myself, I don't know if I could really do that feasibly. It'd be a little easier with another person. So with that trip, honestly, getting down to the wire, thankfully the temperatures looked like they were warming up, and they did. I think they're like, the coldest we got was -23 with a wind chill one of the mornings there, which I could manage easily. But it's also making sure, I had safety measures in place. So as I got closer, I'm like, I can manage this is fine. And we'll talk briefly a bit about the plans I'd made to, allay my fears about being frozen to death by morning. The morning of the camping trip, I can still back out. I was thinking, oh, do I just transfer this reservation to somebody else? But you know what? In my yard, as you guys know, was the Carolina wren. That are traditionally from southern Ontario, southern U.S. range, and they are coming up into our region. They spent their, the winter, near my yard, and I thought, you know what? That morning was a beautiful sunny day when I left, and the little wren started calling. So I thought, you know what? If this wren can literally, survive a winter out here in a -20, we had terribly cold nights. I got this. I can do this. So I got in the car and went on that trip. And same with the Frontenac trip. A good discussion with my little team members there, and we decided that it was something we could manage. And the way we could manage the cold was made action plans for different scenarios. In both trips, extra wood was brought in the vehicle. So in case we end up in a situation we were stranded or whatnot, there's extra firewood that we could get to that was dry, seasoned, insect-free, that was left in the vehicle. So when I drove into the Mule Lake site, it was there. Frontenac, you had to hike back a couple kilometers to go get it. That's fine. So that was the plan. And then we'd always be checking in with each other. Was the plan that if anybody wanted to leave or didn't feel safe, that we could go. And obviously all equipment was tested before leaving, like my wood stove and things like that, so that we know the equipment worked. We had a way to dry our equipment, and we had the proper sleeping bags and things to even if we couldn't get a fire started or whatnot, that we could deal with that kind of cold. And of course, the luxury of Algonquin Park is that Mule Lake, they have a shower house that is heated, so you got that as a backup plan. And as well, they have a visitor center, so you can go for just a couple hours of a coffee, relax, go look at their museum, go logging museum. There's other things you can do if things get really, really cold and you just need a minute. So that's how I dealt with the worry about the cold temperatures that were on those two trips. Well, and as you know, if you guys watched those videos, that everything went off without a hitch. I was warm in both those scenarios. Everybody did really well. Physical demands of these kinds of trips, they are not insignificant. The solo trip wasn't overly arduous, certainly because it was a drive-in site. Yeah, there is a setup and things like that. And when you're solo, that is next level. You are the sole person in charge of setting up your equipment. Ways I got around worrying about my ability with that trip was to set up the tent, because I didn't have another person to kind of hold up the framework. I got 2 little umbrella stands, which I've had in the basement forever. That helped me set up my baker's tent easily. So that was kind of, once the frame went in and I got the back tied up, it was just me putting it all together, and it was absolutely fine. Teamwork is also a thing. If there's other campers around, you can always recruit someone to help you out when doing that. But because it was a drive-in site, I could bring things I wouldn't normally bring into the bush, for example, to help me set up. Definitely takes longer, so you want to budget your time-wise and kind of getting into your campsite early so that you're able to set this up by yourself. But that's just an important part of the planning, so that really wasn't too much of an issue. The physical demands of the Frontenac trip were significant. Each person was carrying a toboggan. A couple of toboggans were over 100 pounds. That's not something I do every day. You look at sled dogs, for example. They're doing summer training, fall training, and they're on the, right now on the Iditarod. I've been following all that kind of stuff. So, pulling things is a lot of work. It involves thinking about, your physical health, involves clothing planning and things like that, because you definitely don't want to be super sweaty and then get a chill. So appropriate, clothing was needed, layers, that you'd shed layers, things that didn't keep the water next to you that would evaporate so you could stay cool was a consideration. A lot of times during that hike, got a little bit stressful for me. That's a lot of weight to pull. And I was realizing, I think next year I'm going to revision those toboggans. I think I needed a little bit more length between the toboggan and me to help with the pulling. So I'm going to think about that. Also going to probably use different toboggans that have, there's less friction there. Maybe I'll wax the bottoms or something like that. But it was tricky. And if you want to kind of get going and get frustrated with yourself that you maybe aren't strong enough, and it's a mental game, you could have negative self-talk, I can't do this is too heavy, I'm just going to abandon all this stuff and walk away. We're just camping here, quarter of a kilometer from the car, I can't do this. But, you gotta persevere through it. And, it's not all about you. You're with a group of people if you're doing this with a group, and that's where that comes in handy. So I was okay by and large on the flat stretches, and I could do it with a lot of breaks. Uphill was a different ball game, of course. Gravity works against you, and the terrain there is really rugged. So it was great. We kind of, I was struggling. So two people, it was like portaging, whatever. You just get some help. 2 of us pulled the heavier toboggans, up the hill. Or one person, if they were stronger, like, you know what, I got this myself, just maybe bring this other stuff up, or if you can bring this pack, I can pull this. So then, you know, there we go, we march up the hill, get to the top of the hill, and boom, I was back in the saddle again, able to do it again. So you feel like an absolute failure, but you can't think of it that way. You've got to readjust your mindset and your goals, because it's just, yeah, it's not everybody can pull like that kind of weight, and it's okay. And you have to acknowledge to yourself that that's okay. It's not a race. No one's like, you know, as long as you make plans that you're going to get to your campsite before dusk falls, it's not a race, you know. You got to, you know, realize that not everybody is in like super duper athlete. So, you know, you kind of work with the slower members of the team, and everybody works together, and the job can get done, and you can get to where you want to be. Got my little feeder system set up. My platform's a little slanted, but the birds don't really care. Got a couple of nuthatches that are visiting me right here. You know, when talking about other people and your teammates on your camping trips, there is sometimes a bit of heaviness, a bit of responsibility that we all feel for each other on the trip, so that can be a little bit stressful at times as well. So in a group, there's always like a leader who generally, you know, comes about when you're kind of doing things and you feel a bit more responsible. Everybody has their own little roles and things like that. If you have too many leaders, then things don't necessarily get done well. So yes, there can be a heaviness, just making sure that everybody's happy, which may not be always possible, and that everyone's sort of safe and that there's nothing going on. So there's always that. So you always got to check in with yourself if you're the leader of the group, make sure your needs are cared for and that everybody else is doing well. Certainly when I was on the solo trip, I was responsible for the dog, and that carries a little bit of stress as well, because, you know, he didn't ask to be on this trip at all, and here he is. I mean, he loves it, but I had to make sure that, you know, my big worry with him was he going to get cold, and making sure that, you know, he's fed, not injured, because we did a lot of hikes during the day, obviously, that he was dry. That was a big thing as well. He does soak up a lot of water at the snow, so I'd make sure he was dried out in the tent. We had to get back at a certain time to make sure that he had a comfortable night. Yeah, we did well. It was great, but things to consider. There can be different group dynamics when you're in different groups, and you got to just sort of check in with everybody and make sure that they're doing well. And of course, also, you know, on the trip too, giving people different tasks to empower them so they feel part of the trip and not just sort of a follower in the whole process, so that they're really enjoying it as well. And it's not just like an arduous trek, that we're all kind of having fun and, you know, are hydrated and are drinking well. And sometimes that can kind of come out on trips, you know, in group trips, and that you can get kind of like snippy with each other or whatever. There can be arguments that break out. And quite often it's not about anything that you think it's about. Sometimes someone's hungry, someone's thirsty, someone's tired, someone's injured, but isn't verbalizing that, or they're not having a good time. They're kind of stressed about, you know, how things are going to get done. Do we have enough food? Are we going to be able to start the fire and things like that? So rarely these things are actually about what you're squabbling about. There's something else underlying it. So everyone should just sort of check in with themselves and check in with others. As I mentioned, make sure, you know, all the basic needs are being met. And yeah, I mean, people sometimes a bit worried about their skill levels, but if someone's really good at one thing, like making meals or whatnot, maybe set them up with that for a while, or to mentor somebody else if they're not familiar, you know, with rehydrating dehydrated foods or meal planning. They can mentor somebody so that person learns, and then maybe next time that person can help out, so that everybody learns new skills without you know, over relying on one person and stressing them to the max. And then people that maybe don't have the same skills as you, they can learn a new skill set and enjoy their trip a little bit more and be a little less stressed. One of the biggest takeaways from me that really stood out to me on the Frontenac trip, so there was a part of the trip where 35 centimeters of snow had kind of fallen over a couple of days or so, and the trail was completely buried. It wasn't there anymore. And so you kind of had to feel with your ski pole and break trail and figure out where it was. So the worst part of it was getting out of site 11, where we were at Frontenac. It goes straight uphill. So in the morning I went and I kind of broke trail up to a certain point, and then we need to get the, you know, hundreds of pounds of toboggan up the hill. So we were going 2 by 2 for the heavier ones, which is what needed to be done. It was just so difficult. And initially when I was doing that, I was sort of looking at there was a couple different sort of stages to this hill, and I was initially looking at, okay, I got to get to like step 1 of this really steep part of the hill, and if I get there, then I'm good. Then I'll go up the next steep one. And I found that strategy didn't really work. So as I was sort of marching up, kind of going in each other's tracks, pulling this really heavy sled, I couldn't really get very far. Like I would get to a point like, oh, I need to stop, and then both of us would stop, which is fine. And then we would kind of, regroup and lurch forward again and kind of go another little bit, another like, I don't know, 10 steps and then stop before I could get to that spot. So I had a realization. So we made it to that first sort of level, had a rest, that little flat spot. And then I kind of was resting and I was like, let me try a little different strategy. So I kind of pivoted, which is really important on trips, is to kind of pivot. It's not about, you have a bar, a standard set in your mind of what you're going to do. And quite often that's nice. You have that, but you have to kind of regroup if things aren't really working well and stop like pushing through it. So what I decided to do was I wasn't going to look up. I knew darn well which direction I was going and I was following the feet in front of me. So what I did was I literally just focused on a step by step by step motion, a very rhythmic kind of walking. I did not look up. Oh, I had to go another 50 meters at this like vertical, you know what I mean? So I was like, I'm just going to keep pulling. I'm going to look literally at the feet in front of me and I'm going to follow those tracks. And honestly, that second bit was just about as long as the first bit, and I did it in one go, like with that method, I was able to not, like, the psychology of looking at the top being like, and then stopping, that wasn't working for me. So, but if I did this methodical walking, like that, looking down, next thing you know, the sled stops because the person in front of me obviously stopped. We're already there. So that was a game changer for me. And I think that principle can be for a lot of things in our life. You look at this sort of end goal and, it looks overwhelming and, you get partway like, I can't do this. And quite often you abandon task or whatever, or you have to keep trudging through it. But it takes you forever to get there because of the bad, self-talk you end up having. So with this method, I found, in life, just go one step at a time, doing what you can, reassessing your goals. You can lower the bar a little bit, it's okay. But sometimes you just slowly go along and you don't really think about all the things into the future in that moment. You'll be surprised that you'll get to the goal in a way you never thought was even possible. So just I'll end on that note because I think that for me was pivotal in these trips, even on going on some of those hikes in Algonquin with the dog. I thought, oh, it's gonna take forever, and you know what, just enjoying the scenery along the way. And that's what I did too at Frontenac, just taking a moment. If I stop, look, enjoy the scenery. It's not all like work. There is work to it, but you're there for a reason, to reconnect with the woods, with yourself, a lot of self-reflection, and just enjoy the nice weather, the birds, the sun, all this good stuff here at the cabin. Enjoy that. So so these trips, they're challenging. They have their own set of psychology behind them, but they can be extremely rewarding when you do them. You can just start small. You can start in your backyard, so you have an out, go in your house if you don't like it. That's my advice for you. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below in the comments some sort of mental talk that you have with yourself on these trips and experiences you've been through. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you down the trail. Bye for now.